Chapter 15-17. Ultimately, the ship of the Roger pirates disappeared entirely from sight, becoming impossible to locate as it navigated further into the treacherous waters of the Grand Line. Despite this, Pride retraced their previous route by traversing the forest to reach Logetown once again. Growl. Ha! It would be better for me to eat something. Step. After approximately 15 minutes of travel, Pride returned to the entrance of Logetown. The area was bustling with activity as both pirates and civilians made their way through the town, easily distinguishable from one another. Despite the commotion around him, Pride made a conscious decision to disregard it all, and instead made his way toward one of the most fashionable restaurants in Logetown. He was simply looking for a place that was visually appealing yet reasonably crowded. KRKK. Upon entering the restaurant, Pride scanned the room for an unoccupied table where he could sit down. One of the waiters, who could easily discern the value of Pride's attire, promptly approached his table. "Good afternoon. How may I assist you?" The waiter inquired politely. "I would like to order your most popular dish, please, and I will have 5 servings of it," Pride requested. The waiter looked a bit skeptical at first, but he nevertheless took Pride's order with a polite nod. "Your order will be served shortly, so please bear with us for a moment." The restaurant was packed with people, but Pride's sharp observation hockey allowed him to pick up on most of the conversations taking place around him. After all, is there a better spot to gather information other than in pubs or eating places? After approximately 15 minutes, the waiter made his way over to Pride's table with his order in tow. "Here are your 5 servings of our most popular dish, which is dressed shrimp paella, rose squid ink pasta, and gazpacho with fairy squash. Enjoy your meal," the waiter said as he placed the plates on Pride's table. "Looks pretty delicious." Upon tasting the food, Pride was thoroughly impressed with the exceptional flavor. The dishes looked amazing, and they tasted even better. Pride had already finished 3 out of the 5 plates, relishing every bite. However, he suddenly stood up from his seat, his eyes now a fiery red. Using his observation hockey, Pride had detected something he had been eagerly anticipating.
Boom.
Pride found himself face to face with 3 pirates who had been laughing and chatting just moments ago. He held one of them firmly by the upper part of his shirt. The pirate appeared to be bewildered by the sudden turn of events and struggled to break free from Pride's firm grip, but to no avail. He realized that his strength was insufficient. Just as the 2 other pirates intended to intervene, his voice rang out. "Oi, are you fucking crazy? Let go of me right this instant." Repeat it. "The thing you just said." I like to sniff on undergarments?" "TZZ, the one before, that with the pea pirate." The pirate had a sudden realization and reached into his pocket, pulling out a wanted poster that he placed on the table in front of him. Thud. "Dead or alive, the icy Draco 300, 000. Pride's eyes widened as he took a closer look at the wanted poster on the table. 300 million? Has his bounty already gone up? He thought to himself, surprised by the high figure. After all, he was still operating in the South Blue years ago. "Now tell me everything you know about this pirate. IW will do as soon as you release me." While Pride was still examining the wanted poster, the 2 other pirates were becoming more and more impatient. Suddenly, one of them made a move to attack Pride, attempting to strike him from behind. Reacting quickly, Pride narrowly dodged the pirate's attack before grabbing him by the back of his head with impressive strength. In one swift motion, he slammed the pirate's face down onto the table with a loud thud. TRKK. The impact shattered the table in half, sending shards of wood flying in all directions. The pirate lay on the ground, blood dripping from his nose and a cut on his forehead. It was clear that he was unconscious. The other pirate standing beside him froze, clearly intimidated by Pride's strength and skill. The second pirate hesitated, his eyes darting between his unconscious comrade and Pride's menacing presence. He weighed his options, but ultimately decided it wasn't worth the risk. With a quick apology, he turned and fled the restaurant, leaving Pride alone with the unconscious pirate on the ground and his other comrade. Pride tightened his grip on the pirate's shirt and leaned in closer to his face. "I don't have time for games," he growled. "You're going to tell me everything you know, and you're going to tell me now." The pirate, clearly intimidated, nodded his head vigorously. All right, he stammered. "I'll tell you everything I know. Just please, let me go." Pride released his grip slightly, but kept a firm hold on the pirate's shirt. "Start talking," he said. The pirate spilled out the information, his voice shaking with fear. "He's called the Ice Cold One, and they say he ate a devil fruit that allows him to turn himself and his surroundings into ice. But no one really believes it. Devil fruits are just myths. He's rumored to be heading towards Xebec Archipelago in the Grand Line." Pride tightened his grip. "I swear, I was only telling the truth. This is what I overheard from people coming from the Grand Line. I've never been there myself, however. It should all be true. Pride let go of him and walked over to the nearby table. Rather than taking a seat, he reached into his pocket and withdrew some cash, placing 2,000 on the table. I appreciate the meal. Please keep the change as a token of my apology for any inconvenience caused. The waitstaff and patrons of the restaurant were taken aback by the stranger's actions. He looked like he could be a pirate, and it was a common belief that they didn't bother to pay for their meals. However, the man not only paid for his food but also compensated for any inconvenience he may have caused, which surprised everyone. 15 minutes passed after Pride left the restaurant, and he drew closer and closer to the forested area. While Pride undoubtedly had enough money to stay in the most luxurious accommodations, he preferred the peace and quiet of the forested areas. It was a familiar environment to him. Pride had spent a considerable amount of time with his grandfather in the forest, and those habits had become ingrained in him. It was difficult for him to break away from those traditions, since he had the necessary strength to defend himself against the dangerous animals and beasts that may lurk in the forest. Pride didn't even consider seeking shelter. Pride found an ideal spot to rest and decided to construct a small sleeping chamber for himself. Although he was living in the forest, Pride didn't want to live like a caveman. After leaving the restaurant, he purchased a sleeping blanket and pillow for himself. Currently, Pride was staying in a small cave that he had discovered, far away from any form of civilization. He spread out the blanket on the cave floor and lay down. Pride rested on the blanket, leaning his head against the pillow, and gazed up at the cave ceiling with his legs crossed. The ambience of the cave was quite tranquil for Pride. The darkness of the cave was only illuminated by the soft, flickering light of his small fire, and the only sound that could be heard was the gentle trickling of water. Given the serene environment, it didn't take long for Pride to slip into a trance-like state. As Pride lay there, he ruminated on the high Nomi devil fruit that Kazan would later obtain. It was incredible that this Draco had possessed it before him. Not only was it immensely powerful, but it was also incredibly versatile. Pride didn't know who Draco was, and he had never heard of him in the canon. However, that didn't necessarily mean anything, as there were likely other powerful pirates that lived during the same era as Roger and Xebec but were never mentioned again. Perhaps Draco was one of those individuals who became stronger later on. Regardless, Pride relished the thought of tormenting him until he begged for death, which sounded quite satisfying to him. Pride was elated at the thought that Draco was on his way to Sabaody Archipelago and would undoubtedly be heading to the New World. It was the perfect opportunity for him to crush his enemy. However, he knew he couldn't wait too long, as he didn't know when Kazan would obtain the high Nomi devil fruit. Moreover, it was highly likely that Draco would perish in the next 5 to 15 years, and he didn't want to take any chances of someone else getting to him before he did. As Pride replayed the scenario of killing Draco in his mind, his grin grew wider and wider until he fell asleep, still wearing a satisfied expression on his face. It is a matter of debate whether the intensity of Pride's hatred towards Draco is justified or exaggerated. However, it is important to note that Pride inherited the memories and emotions of his predecessor, and as such, it is understandable that he seeks revenge against the person who killed his family. The next morning, has it already become daytime? Did I really sleep for that long? Pride awoke to the sound of rustling in the forest and was immediately struck by the beauty of the emerald trees that surrounded him. He realized he had slept for almost 12 hours, and took a moment to stretch his limbs and clear his mind. In addition, the air felt crisp and fresh, as if it had just been purified. The scent of the wet soil and greenery filled his nostrils, making him feel more alive and rejuvenated than ever before. As he sat up, he felt a sense of calm and peace that he had not experienced in a long time. It was as if the forest itself had a healing power that could mend his broken soul. First, I need to find some food, and then I can continue with my training, Pride thought to himself. After a while, a young man became visible carrying a wild boar-like creature in his arms. Thud. Pride found a suitable location for a fire and gently placed the pig-like creature on the ground. After a year of traveling through South Blue, Pride gained many new skills and knowledge. One of these was how to start a fire and roast wildlife. After briefly concentrating on his observation hockey, Pride used his devil fruit ability to attract medium-sized branches for the bonfire. After carving the branches into small pieces, he arranged them into a pile and distributed them evenly to make sure the fire would burn consistently. Lacking a lighter or any other ignition source, he retrieved an arched mirror from his pocket and deftly angled it to capture and reflect the bright rays of the sun onto the gathering of wood. Patiently, he waited for the first glimmers of sparks to appear. Soon enough, the flickers grew into a steady blaze, and the fire began to spread and intensify, the flames dancing and rising higher with each passing moment. Munch, munch. After achieving what Pride considered to be the perfect barbecue, he proceeded to extinguish the fire and thoroughly relished his meal. Pride savored the flavor of his self-prepared meal and couldn't help but appreciate the deliciousness that comes with self-made food. As he finished his meal, he gradually got up and began his training regimen. Despite several hours passing by, the sun still sat high in the sky. 2343 inch, 2344 inch, 2998 inch, 3000 inch. Drenched in sweat, Pride collapsed onto the ground. For the past few hours, he had repetitively executed the same motion, swinging his sword downwards from above. Gulp, gulp. Completely spent from his intense training, Pride guzzled water like a wild animal from the supply he had purchased in town the previous day. Perhaps this time I'll succeed. With his eyes shut, Pride uttered. The area around him started to quake as a purplish aura engulfed Pride, emanating otherworldly energy. In the next moment, he lost his footing and found himself levitating at a slight altitude. However, he struggled to maintain control and quickly plummeted back to the ground. Damn! Floating, let alone flying with gravitational control, is not as easy as I thought. Fujitora must have been incredibly skilled and possessed almost perfect control to perform all the things he did in the anime. It's only now that I realize this as I try to execute them myself, reflected Pride with frustration. Pride resumed his workout, beginning by practicing with his devil fruit to enhance his control and range of the various techniques he had already acquired. Next, he dedicated time to honing his hockey skills. Once again, he depleted all his hockey reserves, hoping that over time, even the smallest increase would help him in his endeavors. Before Pride realized it, night had descended once again. Have I lost track of time or what? Despite his plans to dine at a restaurant that evening, Pride found himself lacking the energy and motivation to follow through with them. Therefore, he resorted to hunting another creature and proceeded to barbecue it. Munch, munch, it's time for my nap, said Pride, holding his right hand over his bulging stomach. A few minutes later, Pride rested on his side in his makeshift bed, his gaze fixated on the cave wall before him as he contemplated the future. He realized that to compete with legendary figures such as Roger and Xebec, he needed a crewmate with strength comparable to that of the future Yonko. While there were many potential candidates, only one individual immediately came to mind: Patrick Redfield, who was about 7 years older than him. Despite Redfield's reputation as a lone wolf, Pride had made up his mind to choose him as his first mate. The challenge now was to locate Redfield and convince him to join his crew. It's time to leave Logetown, he muttered softly. It has been several hours since Pride was lost in thought about what the future holds and the role of his first mate in it. As the sun rose to its full brightness, its warm glow illuminated every corner of Logetown. The streets were bustling with people whose joyous laughter filled the air. Amidst the sea of people, Pride stood out as he made his way towards a place to satiate his hunger. Having skipped out on dining at a restaurant the previous day due to his laziness, Pride was eager to make up for it now and satisfy his hunger with a delicious meal. TRK. Pride headed towards the same establishment where he had dined 2 days ago, with the certainty that the dish would be as delicious as he remembered. Additionally, he wanted to indulge in the same meal again that he had been unable to finish during his previous visit. As Pride walked into the establishment, both the waiters and the guests who had been there during his previous visit recognized him and glanced nervously in his direction. However, their unease quickly dissipated as Pride appeared to be a respectable man, at least based on the way he had conducted himself during his previous visit. "Good afternoon, how may I assist you today?" greeted the same person who had served Pride on his last visit. "I'd like to order your most popular dish, please. Could you please bring me 5 servings of it?" Pride requested. "Certainly, your order will be prepared shortly," the server replied before heading towards the kitchen to relay the order. 15 minutes later, the server returned to Pride's table with the plates of food, placing them down carefully before swiftly retreating to attend to other diners. Munch, munch. As he took his first bite, Pride savored the delicious flavors of the dish and couldn't help but wonder how Sanji's food could possibly be any better than this. "This is still incredibly tasty," he thought to himself. In no time at all, Pride had finished all 5 servings and was completely satisfied. After settling his bill and leaving a small tip for the server, he rose from his seat, feeling content and satiated. "Have a great day, sir." As he stepped out of the establishment, Pride couldn't help but chuckle to himself at the sight before him. It's funny how money can change a person's outward appearance. Pride mused to himself with a wry smile. Currently situated in the heart of Logetown, Pride made his way toward the docks, eager to continue his journey. After a brisk 20-minute walk, Pride found himself approaching the harbor, the sound of crashing waves growing louder with each step. The view that greeted Pride as he arrived at the harbor was breathtakingly beautiful. The bright sun shone down upon the multitude of anchored ships, creating a stunning contrast that filled the air with a sense of tranquility and serenity. It was a perfectly harmonized image, one that Pride couldn't help but admire. Spotting a dockworker among the bustling crowd, Pride made his way towards him, his clothing marking him out as one. "Excuse me," Pride addressed the dockworker. I was wondering if you could tell me if there are any civilian or merchant ships departing for other islands anytime soon? He inquired. After giving it some thought, the dockworker pointed Pride in the direction of a nearby stall. If you're looking for information on traveling, you might want to check out that stall over there, he suggested, gesturing with his index finger toward the designated area. Thank you, Pride replied with a nod of gratitude, before quickly making his way to the recommended stall. As he approached the counter, Pride struck up a conversation with the employee stationed there, discovering that the booth was a ticket vendor for sea voyages. The price of the tickets varied depending on the distance of the journey, he learned. Deciding to take the plunge, Pride purchased a boarding ticket for a merchant ship that was departing in 2 days, offering seats to civilians for a fee. It seemed like the earliest opportunity he could find. With his ticket to Kosia secured, Pride bid farewell to the harbor and made his way back towards the forest plains. With the voyage to Kosia not set to commence for another 2 days, Pride had no intention of idling his time away. Instead, he resolved to spend his time training in preparation for his upcoming adventure. After a brisk 15-minute walk, Pride found himself back in the forest, the same place where he had spent the previous few days. As he had already finished his meal, he wasted no time and delved straight into his workout regimen. Just like in his previous attempts, he tried to employ his devil fruit powers to take flight. While he was able to lift himself off the ground for a brief moment, he was unable to sustain it. Despite repeated failed attempts, he persevered and eventually managed to hover in midair for an extended period. Throughout the process, he didn't neglect his training in swordsmanship or deplete his reserves of haki. After another couple of days had elapsed, the moment had arrived for Pride to make his way to the docks. Logetown Port. The sun shone brightly in the early morning sky as Pride arrived at the bustling harbor. It was filled with a multitude of people who were either arriving in Logetown or departing from it. The only sounds that could be heard were the voices of people chatting and laughing with one another. Their conversations echoed throughout the harbor. The waters were bustling with an array of ships and boats. Those who had just arrived in Logetown were situated to the left, while those who were preparing to depart were stationed on the right, creating an organized flow of maritime activity. In the distance, a larger vessel came into view, its departure for the island of Kosia only 20 minutes away. Among the crowd waiting to board, a young man stood in line, ready to present his ticket. Before long, it was his turn. "May I kindly request that you provide me with your ticket?" spoke the dockworker. "Here you go," spoke Pride, passing his ticket to the employee's hand. "Welcome, please enter, and may you have a pleasant journey," said the man with a feigned smile. Pride, a man who had been traveling for a year, preferred to travel light and didn't carry a lot of luggage with him. His attire was simple and consistent, often consisting of black trousers, a white shirt, and a black coat. He had a sword attached to his trousers and a backpack slung over his shoulders, and that was essentially all he carried with him. Later, Pride was directed to his room and informed that the upcoming journey was expected to span approximately 3 days. As the vessel was a merchant ship with a limited number of guests, it was kindly requested that guests refrain from exploring areas of the ship beyond their assigned rooms or the deck. This is due to the presence of hired guards who are responsible for ensuring the safety of all passengers, and in some cases, they may perceive unfamiliar individuals as a threat and take appropriate action. Given the valuable goods on board that were likely intended for resale in Kosia, it was necessary to employ guards to ensure the safety of the cargo during transit. As such, it was expected that hired guards would be present on the ship to protect the valuable merchandise. As Pride remained in his room, which was sparsely furnished with only a bed, wardrobe, and small desk, he paused his actions to engage in contemplation. Kosia is a relatively obscure location in the One Piece universe, as it has not been prominently featured in either the anime or manga. There is only a brief flashback that shows a bustling city with palm trees and a mountainous landscape in the distance. However, it has been revealed that in the distant future, the Germa 66, a group from North Blue, will invade Kosia in the East Blue. It is during this attack that Sanji manages to successfully escape from the Germa 66. As the journey towards Kosia Island continued, Pride spent most of his time in his room practicing. With limited training opportunities available, he focused on pushing himself to the limit and completely depleting his haki reserves. It wouldn't be long before they arrived at their destination, and Pride was determined to make the most of the time he had. During that time, the ship Pride was traveling on was unfortunately targeted by pirates hailing from the East Blue on 2 separate occasions. Using his keen observation haki, Pride was able to keep a close eye on the unfolding events. However, despite his best efforts, he couldn't help but be astonished by the impressive strength displayed by the pirate attackers. Pride was particularly surprised by this revelation, as he had always considered East Blue to be the least powerful sea. However, based on his observations, it appeared that even the weaker pirates in the current era were on par with those who would later have bounties ranging from 3 million to 5 million bellies in the distant future. Pride was surprised by their strength, but he didn't feel the need to intervene as it wasn't his concern. He knew that if they attempted to approach his chamber, he could easily kill them. However, the hired security personnel were capable enough to defend themselves against the pirates, even against the two who were devil fruit users. Pride remained in his room throughout this time, focusing on his exercise routine. He viewed the situation as irrelevant and not worthy of his attention. A few hours later, knock, knock, Pride, his body drenched in sweat from training, interrupted. He went to open the door. At the door in question stood one of the ship's employees. "Good afternoon. I just wanted to let you know that we will reach Kozia Island in the next few hours." "All right, I'll get ready by then. Then I'll go out on deck." Afterward, Pride took a shower to get ready. As the Roger pirates sailed towards the New World and Pride made its way towards Kozia, a different vessel could be seen making steady progress towards its own destination. Sengoku were almost there, finally. "I had forgotten to bring my rice crackers with me for the whole trip," spoke Garp rather sadly. Sengoku's voice took on a slightly exasperated tone as he addressed his companion. "Garp, why are you always so focused on food?" he asked, a hint of annoyance in his voice. "Shouldn't you be feeling a little down about our failure to capture the Roger pirates?" Garp's expression grew serious as he turned to face Sengoku. "Of course, I'm disappointed, Sengoku," he replied earnestly. "But that doesn't mean I should let it get me down. We have to keep moving forward no matter what. And what better way to keep our spirits up than with a little bit of food?" Sengoku decided not to dignify Garp's words with a response and instead elected to concentrate on more important matters. Their journey from South Blue to Marineford required a few stopovers, but it wasn't too long before they arrived safely at their destination. But, after some time, their ship finally arrived at the port of Marineford.
Boom.
And Garp disappeared from the scenery. Vice Admiral Sengoku. Where did Vice Admiral Garp go? Sengoku's forehead creased slightly as he knew all too well that Garp was making his way to his quarters solely to indulge in his beloved rice crackers. "I don't know," he replied before making his way to his office. After reporting to the Fleet Admiral, Sengoku was informed that a briefing had been scheduled in a few hours to discuss the matter at hand. A few hours later, as Sengoku sat lost in thought, a knock on the door jolted him back to the present moment, breaking his contemplation. "Knock, knock, come in." A Marine soldier entered Sengoku's office and quickly saluted. "Vice Admiral Sengoku, you are to proceed to the conference room." "Thank you. You're dismissed," Sengoku said to the soldier before quickly straightening himself and heading towards the conference room as summoned. As Sengoku made his way to the conference room, he unexpectedly bumped into two more individuals on his path. However, he couldn't help but think that one of them was unnecessary. Munch, BWHHA. "It's good to see you again, Sengoku. Would you like some of these rice crackers?" Garp asked, extending the package in Sengoku's direction. As Sengoku reached out to take a rice cracker, Garp suddenly pulled the package back and swiftly stuffed the remaining 3 crackers into his mouth. Gulp. Garp couldn't contain his laughter and let out a boisterous "Bwahare-che" as tears of amusement began to well up in his eyes. "Garp." Sengoku's patience was wearing thin as he addressed Garp, his voice laced with irritation. He couldn't bear the thought of spending more time with him after the grueling journey to South Blue and back, and now he found himself unable to distance himself from Garp. The mere prospect of enduring his behavior once again made him feel frustrated and exasperated. Rear Admiral Tsuru's swift intervention effectively put a stop to the playful banter between the two men, diffusing any tension that had been building up. With her authoritative yet composed demeanor, she successfully restored order and put an end to their shenanigans. One may question why Rear Admiral Tsuru, a high-ranking Marine officer, would attend a briefing that is typically reserved for the highest echelons of the Marine hierarchy. However, it's important to note that Rear Admiral Tsuru is a respected and seasoned officer who has proven her worth on many occasions. Her experience and expertise make her a valuable asset to any briefing or mission, regardless of rank or seniority. Therefore, it's not unusual for her to be called upon to contribute her insights and expertise, even if she is not the most senior officer present. Without delay, the trio swiftly entered the meeting room, ready to begin their business in a timely manner. As they entered the room, they were greeted by a gathering of individuals seated around a circular table. Garp, Sengoku, and Tsuru joined the others and took their respective seats, ready to participate in the meeting. Although a few more vice admirals were present, the focus of the meeting appeared to lie elsewhere. There were 4 individuals seated together who seemed to be the center of attention. Seated in the center of the group was a man with medium-length gray hair, a well-groomed gray beard, and a pair of brown eyes. His distinct features exuded a sense of peaceful energy, giving him an aura of serenity. He was dressed in a simple gray shirt, paired with a navy coat, completing a modest yet authoritative look. It was Fleet Admiral Toshiro. Seated next to the man with the gray hair was an imposing figure, a middle-aged man with light brown skin, broad shoulders, and bulging muscles. His blonde hair and beard were styled in a row of sharp spikes, and his face was adorned with a unique set of fuzz on both sides, resembling the scales of a lizard. A stitched scar underneath his left eye added to his rugged appearance. He was dressed in a sleeveless dark shirt, which revealed his muscular arms adorned with medals. He wore dark green armbands, a bright yellow scarf around his neck, and draped a white and dark gray navy coat over his shoulders, emanating an air of authority and power. It was Admiral Kong. Seated beside the muscular man was another individual, dressed only in black under his navy coat. He had short black hair and a small, subtle beard on his chin. His face was striking, with intense black eyes and a scar that ran through his right eye, giving him a rugged and dangerous appearance. It was Admiral Zenji. Finally, there was another person sitting next to them, also dressed in black under his navy coat. He had medium-length green hair and a full green beard, which gave him a distinctive and unusual appearance. His black eyes were as dark as the night, and he carried an air of quiet confidence. It was Admiral Midori. Although they were seated, it was clear that these individuals were exceptionally tall. In fact, each of them towered above the 2.50-meter threshold. Their imposing stature only added to their already impressive presence. Midori spoke up, looking visibly annoyed. "Fleet Admiral Toshiro, may I ask why we were assembled?" "I was in the middle of a meal," he said. Toshiro let out a sigh before responding. "I have received a report from Vice Admiral Sengoku concerning the Roger pirates, and I felt it was necessary to convene this meeting to discuss the current situation on the seas. As we all know, we are facing challenging times with numerous powerful pirate crews operating in the New World. The Roger pirates are just one example among many." After Sengoku clarified that Roger was capable of using Conqueror's Haki, everyone paid close attention to his report once again. Toshiro let out a sigh of annoyance and muttered, "Yet another one who can use it. We already know of 6 powerful pirates who possess this ability, and now we have another one to add to the list." One of the vice admirals spoke up and said, "I have a suspicion that might not be entirely accurate. Sakai, could you please share with us the basis for your conclusion?" The vice admiral spoke up, addressing the fleet admiral. "I recently received a report from a commodore that Vice Admiral Tenzumo, who was stationed in the East Blue, was killed in action. It's unfortunate that he was unable to assist in the fight against the pirate who took him down, but it's understandable given the circumstances. However, what's noteworthy is that Tenzumo was a skilled and powerful fighter, albeit not on the same level as Garp or Sengoku. The fact that he was taken down relatively quickly suggests that his opponent possessed Conqueror's Haki. Therefore, it's possible that there are more individuals capable of using this ability than we initially thought." The Vice Admiral's frustration was evident as he relayed this information. The Fleet Admiral responded, "If I recall correctly, you did not mention the name of the individual who defeated Tenzumo. Do you have any information on who that might be?" "I'm afraid we don't have any concrete information about the person who defeated Tenzumo yet. However, according to the Commodore's report, the individual in question was exceptionally tall, standing at around 2.80 meters. He had long, untamed red hair, with strands sticking out in every direction. His eyes were slanted, and he frequently wore a wide, toothy grin. He was seen wearing a high-collared sailor's coat with fringed epaulets, along with a buttoned shoulder belt, and he was carrying a sword," explained the Vice Admiral. "Very well," said the Fleet Admiral with a sigh. "Kong, I want you to select 2 Vice Admirals to accompany you to the New World. Your mission will be to closely monitor the ongoing conflict between the Sphinx Pirates and the Akuma Pirates and report back to us with any valuable information. We can't afford to ignore any potential threats, especially given the recent reports of individuals with Conqueror's Haki." "Understood, Fleet Admiral," replied Kong with a nod, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. The Fleet Admiral's tone grew more intense as he continued, "And you, Midori, I want you to head to the East Blue immediately. We don't know what a pirate of this caliber is doing there, but I want him eliminated as soon as possible. If you can, bring him back alive for interrogation. Tenzumo may not have been on the same level as Garp or Sengoku, but he was one of our own, and his loss cannot go unpunished. I want this problem resolved urgently." The Fleet Admiral's aura was palpably ominous, reflecting the seriousness of the situation. "Understood, Fleet Admiral," replied Midori in a calm and collected manner. Toshiro turned to Tsuru and asked, "Tsuru, I would like to know your thoughts on this pirate from the East Blue. What is your assessment of the situation?" Tsuru responded with her observations. "Based on the available information, it is possible that this pirate is a solo traveler without a crew. He appears to possess formidable individual strength, and may not be bound by conventional pirate hierarchy or alliances. It is unclear what his motives might be at this point, but we cannot underestimate his potential threat to the stability of the seas. Thank you, Tsuru, for your insights. That concludes this meeting. You may all leave now." announced Toshiro, signaling the end of the discussion. The attendees promptly left the room, indicating that the meeting had concluded without any further delay. Toshiro was left alone in the room, deep in thought as he contemplated the recent events and the potential threat that the unknown pirate could pose to the stability of the seas. He weighed the different possibilities and outcomes, considering the best course of action to take to prevent any further incidents. As he reflected on the matter, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, knowing that the safety of the people and the security of the seas were in his hands. Hopefully, the seas will calm down soon, Toshiro whispered to himself as he stood up and left the room, determined to fulfill his duties as fleet admiral and maintain order in the vast oceans. With his mind set and his determination unwavering, he made his way to his next task, ready to face whatever challenges may arise.